If you'll all please rise for the invocation. Tonight's invocation will be given by A.B. Sawyer. He's the Associate Pastor of First Baptist Church here in Fairhope. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
And we pray together. And Heavenly Father, we do approach your throne as you've told us to in the name of Jesus Christ. We thank you again for the love that you have shown through him, your only Son. Thank you again for, Lord, your involvement in the recent hurricane here. We thank you for your protection. We certainly thank you for leading our leaders and others that were involved in protecting us and taking care of us and even cleaning up. We do not take it for granted. Thank you for it. Pray that again during this meeting that all would go well and it would be productive and cordial, that we conduct your bidding because we are the residents of your town. Again, your blessings on this meeting. Please extend your grace and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Sawyer. Appreciate that. Council, I would like to have someone entertain a motion to amend the agenda. We have two items to add. One, I would like to add is item 23. You should have that resolution in front of you there, the selection of PPM Consulting for professional environmental consulting services. I mentioned this in the work session with a not-to-exceed limit of $3,700. So this would authorize the mayor to select them, establish the fee schedule with a not-to-exceed limit of $3,700, and to go ahead and execute the associated contract. There was one other item that I failed to mention in the work session that I would like to be added, and this was at the request of the mayor and Mr. Richard Johnson, and that was that the Grand Hotel had requested, they are not open yet, they had requested the use of the street sweeper to just street sweep their main entrance. I had an email from Mr. Johnson that he believed that it was for the good of the city. You know, when they profit, we profit, and I agree with that, so I agreed to walk it on the agenda tonight. So, Mr. Johnson, did I get that just about right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you can make a motion to add one or both of those. If you're so inclined to do so, I would entertain a motion to amend the agenda to add those resolutions.
Second.
I got lots of motions and seconds. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of amending the agenda. The professional environmental consulting services would be item 23, and street sweeper would be item 24 on tonight's agenda. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of amending the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. Okay, the agenda is amended. First item on tonight's agenda is to approve the minutes of the September 25th regular city council meeting, the work session, and the agenda meetings. Do you have any changes, additions, or deletions to these minutes as submitted? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any final discussion?
Council President?
Yes,
I'm
sir.
going to have to abstain from this vote. I wasn't here last week.
Yes, sir. Okay, Councilman Boone will abstain. He was not in attendance. Okay, all those in favor of approving those minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you, Council. Mayor Wilson, your report, please.
Thank you, Council President. I want to first and foremost thank again our city employees and management team for all their efforts through this weekend. Many have not had a break yet. When we all met Friday morning, I want citizens to know how well organized and prepared the city was. It was like a well-oiled machine, and our crew certainly demonstrated this through Hurricane Nate. Thank you again for all of your hard work and going the extra mile for our community to keep us safe and informed. If any citizen had damage from Hurricane Nate, if you would please email pictures with maybe the description and address, is that correct? Okay, to damage@fairhopeal.gov, and we'll post that and put it on the front page of our website as well. But it's damage@fairhopeal.gov. The City of Fairhope was chosen as the recipient of the Mississippi-Alabama Sea Grant Consortium Resilient Action Technical Assistance Program. It is that long. This grant will help us with the assessment and recommendations for the best use of our land at Fairhope Docks, and all the findings, of course, will be community engaged. The grant will set forth guidance which will help the city achieve not just a clean marina status, but a clean and resilient marina status. We will look at mitigation strategies such as green infrastructure to keep the marina safe during weather events and protect it from erosion. This is an incredible opportunity for the city to work with some of the foremost experts in the region. I'm happy to report that the Christmas tree lights are about 85 to 90% complete. The team left due to the hurricane, but will be back this week to finish it up. This month is a fun time to be a golfer at Quail Creek. On October 27th, the regularly scheduled Wine and Dine is all about Halloween. Customers are required, it's not, it's required that you have to be in a costume. So even if you're playing the 9 holes,
Do you have to drink wine?
maybe that you might have to drink the wine to wear the costume. Winter flowers are going in the greenhouses already. Paul Merchant and his crews start planting the Monday night after Thanksgiving. It's hard to believe that that's almost here next month. I want to make introductions for 3 new employees, and if you can just stand when I mention your name, and I'll introduce y'all one by one. But one started last week after y'all appointed him. Michael Henson, he goes by Mike. He is our new city treasurer, right over there. Mike is a CPA and worked for 17 years with the CPA firms, 10 of which were large local firms in Birmingham. His last few years has been spent in the public accounting arena with government audits. Ugh. Anyway, that made for an easy transition to the next 17 years of his career in municipal government finance. So Mike comes to us well prepared to work for our great city. He and his wife Jan moved to Daphne 4 years ago. So we had already welcomed him, so I was going to say welcome again. The next person is Richard Johnson. He is our new Public Works Director. I am pleased to introduce him as our I've reported, I guess, 2 council meetings ago about his extensive experience he brings to the city. Municipal public works operations, including engineering, project management, administration, streets, building, and mechanical maintenance, garbage, trash, recycling, C&D landfill, oversight. I mean, the list goes on, but it's not as extensive as I said last time. But this is really great, and we're really happy to have you on board. Thank you. Also, last is our new marina manager, Drew Craze. His first, right over here, his first day was today. Yes, the first working day of a hurricane, and we do appreciate that. Always good to have a clean slate. Drew is currently a Fairhope Reserve Police officer. He and his wife moved here a few years ago from West Palm Beach, Florida. He is a U.S. Coast Guard with a 1,600-ton master, he was a captain for a busy private and corporate program with Motor Yacht Invicta, and has 25 years in the maritime business. We are looking forward to his well-honed management and organizational skills to make the Fairhope Docks the best it can be. Thank you and welcome. And I did put the email above there, so that's it. And we got all of our updates from department heads. So thank you, and that's it.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Next item will be public participation, and these would be for agenda items only. We'll ask you to hold your comments of a general nature for the end of the meeting. So if you would like to speak to items 5 through, it would be now 24 with the addition of 2 resolutions. If you'd come forward to the podium, and state your name and address for the record. Agenda items only, please.
I'm Elmer Vick. I live at 102 Ingleside Terrace Circle, and there's an item on the agenda tonight about a rezoning on Edwards, and we discussed 2 weeks ago and then before the Planning and Zoning Commission. My biggest objection is the traffic in and out on Edwards. It is a narrow street that really does not need any more traffic, and you've put something out there that's going to generate traffic. It's just going to make the problem worse. We have children going to and from the intermediate school that use Edwards as a corridor. And I just appreciate if y'all would not rezone that piece of property now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vick. On agenda items. I want to let you speak during that item. Is there anyone else? Big crowd, but an easy crowd tonight.
Don't jinx us.
Okay, I'll close public participation, and once again, you'll be given an opportunity at the end of tonight's meeting to bring other items of interest to the council. Council comments. Councilman Robinson.
Yes, sir. I want to start by echoing something the mayor said. I want to thank our city employees, our police department, and our fire department for being available and on call all weekend, taking care of us. I know that we had some property damage, but I haven't heard of any serious injuries, so I'm very grateful for that. And I'd also like to recognize Charlene Lee. For those of you who weren't here for the work session, she operates the walking school bus, and she was here to tell us about some opportunities they have. But she told us that the program has grown from 55 students last year to 110 this year, which is just a sign of how awesome that program is and what a great job she does. So I want to applaud her for that. And then finally, I want to take a personal moment to say happy birthday to my oldest child. J-Nick turns 9 today, and the world is a better place with him in it. So happy birthday, J-Nick.
Councilman Conyers.
Okay, I've just got a couple comments. Again, echoing Jay and the mayor. When you're preparing for a hurricane, I think you take the approach of prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Our city employees were definitely prepared. They were on standby, many of them working around the clock. I think we did get about the best we could have gotten under the circumstances. I think, you hate to have any destruction of piers and sidewalk down by the main pier, but we really dodged a bullet, so very fortunate for that. Secondly, because of the hurricane, the Fee Fantasy event was postponed, and they got together with the bands and the caterers and have rescheduled that event for October the 21st here at the Civic Center. So if for some reason you hadn't already bought a ticket, you have a second chance now, and it's a great event, so please come out and support the Fairhope Educational Enrichment Foundation.
Thank you, Councilman Conyers. Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Councilman Burrell. Yeah, again, thank you, city staff and employees, for what you did during the storm. I'd also like to take, Mr. Vick talking about item number 6. If it is approved and they're given the okay to build that, maybe the city could look at putting in a sidewalk connecting Ingleside to Greeno. There's a sidewalk on Greeno and there's a sidewalk on Ingleside, and at least that would give a safe place for pedestrians and kids riding their bike to school where they could ride, if the city would consider that. That's all.
Councilman Boone.
No comment.
Okay, a broken record. Thank you, staff, for all your dedication this weekend, and I think we did dodge a bullet, and hopefully that'll be our hurricane for the next 12 to 15 years, if we could be so lucky. With that, I'll close council comments and move on to item 5 on tonight's agenda. This would be a final adoption. An ordinance to amend zoning ordinance number 1253, the request to rezone the property of Kelly Lyons from residential agriculture to R2 medium density single family residential district. This property is generally located at 10143 Windmill Road, Fairhope, Alabama. This was introduced at the last regular called city council meeting.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you, Council President. Again, this was the final hearing for this rezoning. It is, the current zoning is RA, which is rural agriculture, which has a minimum lot size of 3 acres. The requested zoning is R2, which has a lot size of 10,500 square feet, minimum lot width of 75 feet. This was heard by the Planning Commission, and they recommended approval. Staff concurs with that recommendation. There was also a two-lot subdivision that was approved contingent upon the rezoning. So I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Dias? Okay, and you did say you did recommend unanimously approval, and I don't recall anybody speaking at the public hearing against this. Okay, council, I'll entertain a motion for final adoption.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second for final adoption. Any final discussion? Okay, hearing none, clerk, will you call that?
Council President?
Aye.
Place 2?
Aye.
Place 3?
Aye.
Place 4?
Aye.
Place 5?
Aye.
Okay. Ordinance is adopted. Thank you, council. Item number 6 is the final adoption of an ordinance amending zoning ordinance number 1253. This is the request to rezone the property of William H. Wright from R1 low-density single-family residential district to B1 local shopping district. The property is generally located at 861 Edwards Avenue in Fairhope, introduced also at the last regularly called city council meeting. I understand that there are some developments in this as well.
Yes, sir, I believe there
I
is.
believe we have their engineer of record. to
That's
speak
correct,
to
yes,
that as
sir.
well.
But just real briefly, the property is zone R1 currently, which is residential, single family. The request is for B1. As you know, we had an extensive discussion at the last meeting. This was recommended by the staff for approval. The Planning Commission voted to deny this application. But again, as the council president mentioned, there are some developments that Larry Smith, the engineer for the applicant, could probably come up and tell us about that may mitigate some of the concerns that were raised at the last meeting.
And I may just preface this, council, by reminding you all that there was a discussion held at the last meeting about B1 versus B4, and although we have some financial institutions in B4, they didn't explicitly state that a bank could be in B4, which I think is something that we need to look at, but they fit in B2. And there was the question at the end of the conversation about would the seller and/or buyer be willing to accept some self-imposed deed restrictions. So I believe that's been addressed.
Yes, we were talking about B1 though, not B2. But yes, B1 allows several different uses. Some of them seem to offer some concerns because the question was what happens if the bank doesn't go on the property, because as y'all all know, the zoning follows the property. It doesn't go away. It's not site plan restrictive. And so I believe as Council President Burrell asked if it would be possible if there would be some type of deed restriction, which I wasn't able to answer at the time. And my client came to me today, or one of the representatives of the clients came and said that they would be willing to put a deed restriction to not allow a restaurant, dry cleaner, laundry, or automobile service station on the property. And so what that leaves you with are your office uses. It would allow grocery, and the site's not big enough for it. It would allow general merchandise. And then the general personal services, which is where the bank fell under the description, and indoor recreation would be the uses that would be left with that. So hopefully with that, it will help calm some of the concerns over the zoning designation of B1. Also, on the traffic, I concur with Councilman Brown. If there was a pathway along Edwards there, because right now what I see whenever it was actually last year when I'd run car line for my child that was at the intermediate school, children were crossing over 98 across Edwards there. There's not a crosswalk there. But to get there, they would have to go down to Fairhope Avenue, then turn back, but there's still not a sidewalk to carry them down Edwards. And so I think that would be a good idea. And obviously, we'll put sidewalks along our frontage on Edwards, but if that could be continued to interconnect the sidewalks, that'd be good.
Any questions for Mr. Smith, council? Okay, I'll open it up for discussion. Any council member? Any discussion?
I would just say that my concern last meeting was primarily based on what happens after the bank, or what happens if the bank changes its mind. And I think by willing to address those items in a deed restriction, those were the primary concerns I would have had, is what if you have a restaurant or a service station or something there. And I think by putting that in there, that certainly makes it more palatable. And really, a bank ought to be a fairly good neighbor. It's only open Monday through Friday, not at night. Probably not really that high traffic, so.
If I can also add, there's some significant buffering that's required by our ordinance to the rear of the property. So, 20-foot buffer, landscape buffer, that's significant. I think that would help make that more compatible with the surrounding area and mitigate any sort of noise or lights. It has to be heavily landscape buffer, which I think would do a very good job of making it more compatible than.
So that's a good point, Mr. Dias. Were there any other staff recommendations or contingencies that staff recommended on that? Recommended approval?
No, sir, I don't think so. I think the way the ordinance currently reads, we have a buffer requirement in our zoning ordinance, but also in the landscape ordinance, which is separate from the zoning ordinance. It also has some buffering required there too, buffering to the rear, buffering along the road with planting of trees and so forth. When you place all those together, the site is constrained significantly for any kind of development. It's really a narrow site to begin with. When you add the buffers in that's required on the street frontage, on the sides, and on the rear, it creates a site it would not be a large building at all, especially when you consider the parking and drainage features and those kind of things. So I think from that perspective, the buffering requirements do a very good job of mitigating any kind of adverse impacts you might see.
Council?
I like to see stuff like this where we have some concerns from our community. And Mr. Vick, I understand the desire to minimize traffic in that area. And especially, Larry, as you point out, kids crossing the roads there. I think that property is going to be developed into something, and I think if we can keep it something, and I applaud the developer for placing restrictions on themselves to more narrowly fit what I think might be the best use of this particular piece of property. But I've seen this now a couple of times where we've had a project proposed, we've had an outcry from the community, and then there's been some concession on the part of the builder or developer to give a little, to compromise, and I like that, and I'd like to see more of that, to see maybe if we can continue to figure out a way to do things that are going to work in conjunction with what the citizens want, but also develop at a pace that Fairhope's moving. But I think I like the restrictions. I think it helps, and I think what we discussed in planning and zoning last week with site plan review on rezoning properties, maybe in the future will help alleviate some of these fears when these open rezonings are asked for.
That's right.
Councilman Brown or Boone?
Good.
Nope. Yeah, I basically just want to reiterate what both Councilman Conyers and Councilman Robinson said. As I stated at the last meeting, I do believe that it's going to be something other than R1 in the future, and this is, as I stated then and still stated tonight, is that this is about as minimally as invasive as it can be. I am cognizant of the increased traffic. You're worried about it coming off of Mr. Vick, coming off of Greeno Road, and then exiting off onto Edwards. However, I would also say that traffic would be almost limited to that distance between Greeno Road and Edwards, and we can't control that anyway. That's an ALDOT decision. Most anything that's going to go there, they're going to require it to go there. And I also stated that, you know, having banked along that road, I just don't see, I see that as about the minimum amount of traffic that you'll see. So I do applaud the seller's willingness to attach deed restrictions to the sale of this property, and I'm assuming that the buyer would agree to that. I do want us to expedite the site plan review prior to open rezoning the property. I'm really anxious to get that done.
Right.
I think that will be a big leap forward for the city of Fairhope.
We had a lengthy discussion at the planning commission meeting, and I think it was well received, and we'll definitely get that as quickly as we can to the, it has a companion document that goes along with it that we'll discuss at the next planning commission meeting, but we can get those together and
You
have
know,
it done in a short
open-ended.
time.
Now, I don't have any reason to distrust these buyers that they're going to build a bank.
Right.
But technically, they could build something else once it's purchased, subject to the deed restrictions
That's
as well.
correct. That's correct.
So it just would help to alleviate, you know, other concerns.
Sure.
And there's been other properties that were speculative in nature that, more speculative in nature
Right.
than this, I think.
Yeah. We will certainly get that expedited as quickly as we can and get it to you all for a decision.
Right. Council, my instructions are, if someone was to make a motion for final adoption, and if you are in favor of those deed restrictions, you would need to make that motion that this is subject to deed restrictions as stated, and we might want those for the record, Mr. Smith. I believe you said gas station, cleaners, dry cleaners or laundry, or restaurants.
Yes, restaurant, dry cleaner / laundry, or automobile service station.
Right. Would that include gas stations as opposed to, say, an automotive repair shop?
Yes.
Okay. And that would run concurrent with the property forever, I would assume.
Yeah, it would be in the deed restrictions, which would follow the link.
Council, I'll entertain a motion for final adoption.
I'll make a motion that we approve, subject to the deed restrictions, including restricting the use of the property for a restaurant, dry cleaner / laundry, or automotive service station.
You want to say gas station as well?
Gas station.
Service station or gas station?
Service station or gas station.
Because none of them do both now except for Rambo. All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for final adoption of this ordinance, subject to the deed restrictions named. Any final discussion? Okay. Hearing none, clerk, will you call the question?
Council President?
Aye.
Place 2?
Aye.
Place 3?
Aye.
Place 4?
Aye.
Place 5?
Aye.
Okay. Ordinance is adopted. Thank you, council. Item number 7 is an ordinance amending ordinance number 1398, known as the Fairhope Erosion and Sediment Control Ordinance, to amend and add Article 7, Erosion and Sediment Control, specifically Section 7-154, 155, 156, 158, 159, and 164, that were all introduced at the last city council meeting. This will be known, once again, as I stated, as the Fairhope Erosion and Sediment Control Ordinance to amend and add Article 7. That's a repetition. That was a copy and paste error there, isn't it? I'll catch that. Eric, would you let us know what's changed? Kind of give us an overview on what's changed since the last time?
Yes, sir.
Spoke to this?
Yes, Mayor and Council, one of the things we did was try to cover some areas in this ordinance, like we're doing with the moratorium, that were kind of vague, depending on the types of projects. So if you would like, I can go back through them, or if you just want to talk about the things we
I think that
changed from the
you
last
should
meeting.
Go back through it some.
Sure.
Eric, and the one reason why is because I would consider Councilman Boone somewhat of an expert in
Okay.
in this subject matter, and he
And he
wasn't
was not here, that is
as well.
correct. Okay, so one of the things we did, the ordinance itself does not necessarily address sites with multiple buildings on it. It treats the site itself, but not the individual buildings. So one of the things we did was we added a definition of a development site for a parcel of 1 acre or greater, and that is for multifamily, commercial use, different uses, so we actually defined it. For going further down, one of the other things we have run into in the past years is when you have a large piece of property, civiculture work or tree harvest was exempted from the erosion control ordinance. We did not require any permits, did not require any kind of BMPs or erosion control. What we did was, that is still the same. If it's true civiculture work and they're not grinding stumps or grubbing, then they do not have to have an erosion control plan or a land disturbance permit. But if they come back to develop that site afterwards, we're going to make them revegetate the site. Instead of having multiple acres of stripped ground, they have to come back and revegetate it, then they can get started on their project. That's one of the things we decided to do. We did put a notice in there about third-party reviews. A lot of times, these are complicated plans. With the addition of Mr. Johnson, that's going to help tremendously, but there may be a time where we need to send this out for a third party, and as we do with all of our other permit fees and application fees, if we do incur a cost from a third party, that is going to be passed on to the applicant. Clearing techniques, one of the things we had done before was we had listed some fairly limited amounts around the buildings they're allowed to work. We bumped those out so that they have 30 feet around a single-family residence, they have 50 feet around a commercial site or multifamily site.
20 feet last.
Was it 20? Yeah, I think I think we went from 20 to 30. I think we went from 30 to 50 on the commercial and multiple building sites. And I think we went from 20 to 40 feet past the curb and gutter on the right-of-way, because if they're trying to lay utilities in, they need more room to work. One of the things that we had in the last one was listing percentages. They could disturb no more than 40% of a site, and I was reminded it's probably better to keep it simple. So what we did was, if you have multiple buildings on a site, we will treat each building as its own erosion control site in addition to the overall site protection. So it's an additional layer of defense to enclose those multiple buildings or large commercial buildings. The other thing we did, right now, our ordinance lists either seed and mulch or sodding of the waterways as a final measure. It's very rare that the seed and mulch takes, or you have to do it multiple times, and they end up typically having to come back and sod it anyway, so we just put the requirement in that at final they will sod it, which will get a good surface in so that we don't have erosion issues continuing after it's done. And that's pretty much it. Those are pretty much the changes we made from the last one, and it was just, like I said, with the moratorium, it was an attempt to try to find some of the holes in our regulations and address them when we have these types of sites.
Questions, council?
Thank you for the revisions.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure this is strictly for development cases only, not for home site building.
Well, that's correct. Well, what we did was aside from those changes, the ordinance stayed the same as what we're doing now, but for development sites, it's for 1 acre or more. So it's a larger site that someone's doing multiple buildings on. Right now, they still have to have BMPs in place. They have to have erosion control fences on a single-family site. So that's not going to change. This is mainly to address large sites with multiple buildings on them, which was really not addressed in the
I
original
guess I was
ordinance.
more concerned about the clearing around the buildings.
Yes, well, we extended those areas where they can clear around the buildings up to 30 feet around a single family, 50 feet around a commercial or a multifamily, and then 40 feet past on the right-of-ways. That gives them room to work, but instead of going in and just stripping the whole lot.
Right, but the homeowner has the right to clear what he wants. Once he buys the lot, he can clear what he wants. Is that correct?
They can, but what they have to have is, past that, they have to have their erosion controls in place, and then we have them go back and either revegetate or do something to prevent, if they go and strip 50 feet past a house, they're going to have their fences no more than 30 feet around it, and we may make them go back and put seed and mulch down, or make them put straw down or something to provide a buffer on that extra area.
I think what he's asking is, is this applicable to a single-family
It's applicable to
homeowner that is just going out and maybe making an improvement to their home? Are they subject to this ordinance?
So it's got to be over 1 acre.
Yeah,
If
well,
it's
for the
over one-
changes, they're subject to it now,
Yeah.
but for these changes to come into effect, it's got to be over 1 acre.
Okay.
Questions, council? I'm kind of looking down to my left at Councilman Boone and Brown and for some guidance. Councilman Brown, I think that you had some reservations at the last meeting. Does this alleviate your
Right.
reservations?
Yes, it does. The percentages and the way the roadways are, either put in or aggregate put down.
And I do need to clarify that for Councilman Boone, because I didn't mention that. If you have a site that has interior roadways on that site, we're going to require that they put down an aggregate base over that roadway. Either pave it or put an aggregate base over the roadway
Once it's prepared, or,
before they can begin construction of the houses.
oh, right.
Yeah.
Same as the subdivision
They have
Right.
to stone the roads for.
Right.
Yeah, before they can begin, instead of driving on these intended roadways as muddy sites. They have to solidify those roadways.
Any other questions, council? Okay, council, I hate to do this to you, but I've just been instructed by our clerk that these changes are probably extensive enough that we need to just reintroduce this. So I'm going to have someone just, if you would, reintroduce the ordinance. We've already discussed it, but can I have a reintroduction of this?
I'll reintroduce it.
Okay, so it's been introduced. All right, so clerk, we can still now vote for final adoption?
You still have to do immediate consideration.
Right, correct. Okay, so do you have any other questions for staff? Okay, we need to vote for immediate consideration if we want to vote on this tonight, so I'd entertain a motion for immediate consideration.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for immediate consideration. Any further discussion? Clerk, will you call the roll on that?
Council President?
Aye.
Place 2?
Aye.
Place 3?
Aye.
Place 4?
Aye.
Place 5?
Aye.
Okay, now I'll entertain a motion for final adoption.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for final adoption. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, clerk, will you call that question?
Council President?
Aye.
Place 2?
Aye.
Place 3?
Aye.
Place 4?
Aye.
Place 5?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, council. Item number 8 is a resolution authorizing signees of all City of Fairhope accounts. This is just necessary due to having a new city treasurer. You see the signers there in your binder as the mayor, myself, city treasurer, and city clerk. I would entertain a motion to authorize these signees.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second authorizing the signees of all City of Fairhope accounts. Any final discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay. Item number 9 is a resolution the City Council to approve the selection of Tischler Bice to perform professional financial consulting services to study the update on impact fees for the City of Fairhope, and hereby authorizes Mayor Karen Wilson to establish a fee schedule and to execute the associated contract with a not-to-exceed limit of $68,000. Who will speak to this on behalf of the city again? I know that at the last meeting we discussed this someone, but is there someone that can discuss this? Mayor, would that be you or? Okay. Would you
I
go
can
ahead?
speak to it, or Eric probably, but basically this is, the last study we did was 10 years ago, and it established the percentage that should be allocated for streets, fire, police, parks and recs. And the local legislation wrote this law basically for cities, municipalities who collect a 1% impact fee that only affects, of course, development inside the city limits, that it can go to stormwater, it can go to schools, and what that means, because we have county schools, and the county can also implement 1% impact fee, that anything that we put in that would go to schools would be in partnership with the county, and it would go towards building schools. So it's a little different, but I'm just letting you know that it does include that, and we do need some new schools. We're hoping to have 2 K-6s open by 2019 school year. So, and then, of course, the ones that I just mentioned. Because it's been 10 years, our growth is definitely different than it was 10 years ago. We do need to update it. It's not a matter of sitting on the fence. You really have to do that to appropriately, allocate those percentages to each one of those groups. And the firm that we picked is the firm that's used in this whole area, and really, I think all of Florida and across the nation. They do a really good job, and he will come down and speak to us as well.
Mayor, so are they only going to advise us where to spend our impact fees, or are they going to advise us as to how much we should collect in impact fees? And the reason I ask that question is, can we not collectively decide where we want to spend the impact fees?
No, it has to be studied, it has to, or otherwise you can get sued. It really has to be appropriate percentages allocated to these areas. And it's 1%, that's not going to change. 1% of development inside the city limits, that will not change. It's the amount of money percentage-wise. I mean, police, for example, gets the lowest amount at like just over 3%. And I do think that, you know, I'm not going to know what the study takes 3 months, so these are not arbitrary numbers they're going to pull out. This is a study that you have to have a study, whoever you end up picking, and because this one was used last time and is used throughout our region, this is the one that I felt was appropriate to do another study. But it's an extensive 3-month study. It gives us a lot of information, and just that allocation is what you have to have backed up by data. It can't just be, well, I think we need more in police, so let's go up.
Why are you having them spend resources on studying how impact fees can be spent on the building of schools when we are in a county
No,
school system?
we're not.
What am I
not.
misunderstanding there?
No, I was just telling you what that local legislative, you know, state law was. I was just explaining it to you. It says that it can go to schools, but the county doesn't have and charge impact fees. So since we have county schools, what we could potentially use the money for, this is coming from the company, they'll explain it better, is if you wanted to put some of the money into infrastructure for schools, you could. Doesn't mean that y'all would want to choose to do that. I'm just explaining that we are allocating money to these 4 areas, and we're leaving out stormwater, which I do think needs to be tied in, and then that percentage needs to be looked at.
So we would be potentially sued. We're spending it in 4 places, and they're going to tell us that we can take this basket of money and spend it in 6 or 7, and we decide.
Well, and then you'll make the resolution accordingly.
Yes.
And I do think the resolution does need to be more lenient on what you can purchase. It all has to do with growth.
Right.
And I think that this company can also really help us with making that, so we are having more help in these areas to fund things. You know, these balances sometimes are just left untouched, and it's because it's a pretty narrow local resolution that can be changed also.
Yeah, one of the things, Council, that they do a demographic study, and they will tell you, based on demographics, let you decide as a body and the mayor how you want to spend this money. One of the things we talked about in the work session was the original ordinance and the original study was done in 2007. And it was a different growth and different economic situation then. At that time, the council chose to spend the bulk of the single-family impact fee money on Parks and Rec. I think Parks and Rec gets like 55% of it. There wasn't, at the time, probably as much of a priority on stormwater, and I think everybody here can tell you that's one of the first things people talk about now. So the reason for this is impact fees are, it's a very easy way to get sued. If you're collecting, and we collect a lot of money in impact fees, if we're not using it properly or we don't have any kind of information backing how we choose to spend it, that's one of the reasons for having the study done. And as conditions change in the jurisdiction, really our ordinance says this is supposed to be restudied about every 3 to 4 years to be able to reflect what the current economic situation is in your area. So that's one of the reasons this firm did the studies, I believe, for Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, Foley, all of our other Baldwin County jurisdictions that are charging impact fees. This firm has a very good grip on Baldwin County and how things are and what the circumstances are here. And from our standpoint, it's worth it to have them provide us that information, and then you can make an educated decision on where you feel that money should be more properly allocated.
Okay, I've got a couple questions. One, that 68,000, that can be paid out of existing
Paid out of the
fees, right?
impact
It is
fee
paid out
money,
of
yes.
Okay. But now my second question, I thought I understood this, but just now you're saying when we get the study back, then we can decide how to allocate it? Because I was thinking once we got the study, the whole idea was that it dictates how those
They can
are
make
going to be
recommendations. Ultimately, this body will decide how you want to spend that
But
money.
we need the
You have to have the
supporting
data.
But you need to
evidence
have,
of
you
the
can't
data.
just, because one of
Gotcha.
the, and I think I mentioned during the work session, one of the confusing things about the ordinance is it sets a certain fee schedule. I can never charge the fee that's in the schedule because we always hit the 1% state cap first. So, you know, it would help to clarify the fee schedule in the ordinance because people look at that ordinance.
We can actually change the fee schedule potentially. That was one of the keys to this.
Right, exactly.
This is the time, if we're going to make a change in that.
Right.
How we do that, this is the time to do it.
Yeah, and one of the things we had talked about is as it's written right now, the maximum that can be charged on a single family is $4,184. That is 1% of a $418,000 house. The houses that are more than that, $2 million, are paying $4,184. Now, that does not
Jay's paying
necessarily mean,
$4,184.
but that also doesn't necessarily mean that house, that larger house, has a greater impact. You can look at other ways to assess those fees based on the number of rooms and an anticipated number of occupants. That's probably the more fair way to do it. But that's one of the things, when this was done in '07, that wasn't considered. So it really would be to our benefit to have this study done so that we have better information to make a decision.
I want to add one more thing, just real quick about the schools. We can ask, and I am going to ask Baldwin County to look into, that they also did a own study just for schools. If we were to do it for Fairhope and include schools, it would cost us the same amount as if all of Baldwin County would do it. If they would redo their study, then anybody, any city in Baldwin County who charges the 1% impact fee can have the data to back up using some of the funds for the schools. So for that same $25,000 to $45,000, asking the county to do that, we would have that data, and all the municipalities would have that data. So
Yeah.
I'll be asking them to do that when they come down.
Yeah, to my knowledge, Baldwin County has the authority to charge an impact fee. To my knowledge, they elect not to. They don't. As far as I know, I may be corrected, but I don't believe they do. And I think most all of the municipalities do. I'm not sure about Daphne. I know Gulf Shores and Orange Beach both charge one. I'm not sure about Foley, but, you know, like I said, when this was originally done in '07, our circumstances are vastly different than they were in '07. You know, from a growth standpoint, from an economic standpoint, and it would be to our benefit to have this study looked at, updated with more current information.
I agree with the growth is definitely different, but you gotta go back to we can only charge impact fees inside the city.
That is correct.
So growth
It does.
within the city
Sure, but I
is
also,
minimal
you know,
compared to what's outside the city limits.
that's true. One of the things I've been, you know, in speaking with the mayor, though, is, you know, we track our inspections every day. And I track inside the city or outside the city on the inspections, and we're running at about a 80% clip of our inspections being inside the city. Most of the subdivision expansions that we're dealing with and we're issuing the most permits in, which is Old Battles Village, Firethorn, Fox Hollow, they're all in the city. It's single family. What happens outside the city tends to be larger projects. They tend to be more the Grand Hotel, you know, the church projects that we've got coming in. There tends to be larger projects in the unincorporated county.
And they do pay impact fees to the county, don't they?
They do not.
No.
No.
Not
And
all.
and that's what
charge
we're
impact
looking at,
fees.
Yeah.
something to propose, not now, but
But the
something
county
to
could
look
charge
at.
impact fees and then not use that money, you know, they can use it however they want.
And I
They're not
believe,
charging it, though.
I understand.
but there's
Right.
also a cap
I
on
mean, I
how
wish
long
there
you
was.
have to spend them too, correct, Mayor?
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean,
there's
you
only
have
yeah.
to, that's why everything, it's all about the study.
Sure.
And I do think that even when we get to that point and get the updated data, it's really looking at everything and all the recommendations that they bring to the table on how to use that money, which would be included in this cost is going to really help us very short term accomplish a lot of the things that we want to accomplish.
When you say we could get sued, who would sue the city?
You open yourself up, you have to have data to go with. It's even when we have, our connection fees and, you have to have the data to back it up. Appropriate studies, or you
Well,
absolutely
but
would open yourself
Were
up
they
to.
going to sue us on how we're spending it?
Developers, actually,
They-
if you go to other areas, there are quite a few lawsuits over impact fees and how they're used. Now, we have not had a local developer do it, but if somebody has to write $1 million check for an impact fee, they're going to be keeping up with how it's spent and how it's done, and how did you come to that amount? This is something that, as far as I understand, is very heavily litigated in other areas. So,
Absolutely is. This comes
Yeah.
from Ken also.
yeah.
Other questions, council? Did we bother to look at, are there any other consulting firms that perform this? I understand that they've done this before, and they've done it for a lot of municipalities. And I hate to say it, but, the $68,000 that they're not to exceed has already been written in their proposal.
Okay.
How does that, is that right?
I did not go to try to find, no, I didn't, in talking about it, Titler Bison, I think that's how you say it.
I engaged
Titler
them
Bison.
because I put this in the
Yeah.
budget,
Yeah.
so I wanted to have an amount.
I mean, you put it in the budget, but it's also in their proposal, in Tischler Bice's document, so.
Right,
how did we-
when I put it in the budget originally, all I did was just ask them, what did they think it would be before we got a scope of work? I just wanted something to put in the budget. But I think of the original was maybe 60, which is not that much more than what we spent 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
Questions? Any more discussion?
Can we table this till next meeting and try to get a little bit more information to see?
We would entertain a motion to pass the resolution, and I can entertain a motion to table it if that's what you desire.
I'd like to get more information before we spend $68,000 to study it. If it's ultimately up to the council to decide how the money's spent, they're going to come to us with a recommendation. I'd like to get a little bit more information before I vote on it.
Is that a motion to table it?
That's a motion to table it.
Okay, I have a motion to table this resolution. Do I have a second? I'll second it. Okay, we have a motion and a second to table the resolution. Any final discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, the ayes have it. It'll be tabled to the next agenda, or next meeting, I'm sorry. Okay, item 10 is a resolution that Mayor Karen Wilson is hereby authorized to execute change order number 1 to project number PW001-17 Fly Creek Marina Seawall Improvements with an increase from the contract in the amount of $11,400, and to award the change order to MD Thomas Construction. The scope of work will be modified to exclude the fuel dock shelter, so that's a deduction of $17,850, and to include mobilization of the fuel dock, $29,250 for a total net change order value of $11,400 to the contract. Mr. Peterson, can you speak to this? I guess my question is, tell us exactly what we're getting for this money now. What is going to be completed? I mean, we've been, kind of in a rush to get a lot of this
Right.
done. And
We're going to extend the bulkhead in the area that had failed in front of the fuel dock,
Okay.
and we're going to tie it back in to where we have recently completed some refurbishment of the area right at the concrete slab of the fuel dock. And then we're going to put in the deck system, or backfill and put in the deck system that was in the original contract.
Okay. So this doesn't include the if we pour a pad for the fuel tanks that we've talked about, we still have to have that?
No, sir.
engineered,
Yeah, that'll be
which
a
is
whole
little later
separate,
on.
that'll be a separate deal.
Okay. All right. Any question? I just wanted
Yeah, now,
clarification.
we did have-
This has
we-
been moving so fast and
I
furious, and
understand.
it's confusing.
And we did have a shelter that was on the original construction documents that was at the fuel pump system, but since we're considering moving that potentially to another location, we took the shelter out to minimize the impact of the change order.
The shelter was just going to shelter the pumps, or?
Yes. Well, it was going to be a little bigger than the pumps, but it was a shelter that would be at that location.
I thought that the pumps were going to kind of stay put, but the tanks were going to move. Am I mistaken?
Well,
Are we waiting on that to
I
be
may be mistaken. I
honestly, I don't know.
I met with.
That's what I envisioned.
I met with the environmental consultant.
Right.
And McKinney Petroleum today. If we move the tank up the hill or away from the pumps, we're going to have to inspect the underground piping once every year, every other year, and have it certified that there's no leaks on it, which requires soil samples being taken and tests done, and can be pretty expensive on an annual basis to accommodate that test requirement. They recommend putting the tank right next to the dispenser, but they recommend a horizontal tank that's got two, both diesel and unleaded gas, in one. It'll be one tank, but it'll be two compartments. And so that's the proposal that they're looking to provide with the environmental group, looking at when they pull some of that up from what's existing, they'll try to make sure there's been no spills that have been undetected that have caused problems in that exact location. But the part about moving it, if we're going to have any other facility and then a master plan created for that site, I don't know where it makes most sense to have a fuel dispenser at this point. But I do think those options ought to be open, and we'll be meeting with our current fuel supplier to see about temporary fuel tanks and temporary dispensers that will be right in that same location, but we got to be far enough away where they can accomplish this work.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any questions for Mr. Peterson?
Trying to make sure I understand, you're going to put the dispenser within how many feet of the boat in the water?
Well,
50, 60 feet? I mean, you're going to drag a hose that far, or?
no, once we have a master plan, the dispensers are going to be right at the edge of the dock, wherever that location happens to be. If we want to be closer to the dock store so that whoever manages the dock store can assist with fueling boats, that may be where it goes. If we want to leave it close to where the entrance is to the travel lift, then it'll probably stay just exactly where it is. But I think we're looking at a master plan for this project. If we have a boat storage facility in a different location to put boats in the water, and in part of those leases, we require that they fill up their gas tank every time we haul the boat out, then it only makes sense to have it next to where they're going to be hauling the boats out.
Well, actually, what I was getting at was there's a distance between, in order to do the testing, it has to meet a certain distance from tank to dispenser, or did I misunderstand that?
To do the testing?
Yeah, or is test required no matter what?
The tests are required for underground piping. And by having the tank and the dispensers close to each other, all that piping can be above ground. So you eliminate that testing by having the tank and the dispensers close to each other, like it is now.
Right.
But if you move the tanks, then
Further
you're going
back.
to be putting gasoline in pipes underground that the regulations are going to require annual or semi-annual tests, or biannual, I guess would be 2 years. But either way, it costs money, and both the current, I forget the guy's name, but who works for the Marina Group now, and the McKinney Petroleum representative that looked at the site both of them said that you do not want to separate the tank from the dispenser for that reason. I don't have any experience in it, but I trust their judgment because I think they know what
Please
they're.
put up a no smoking sign.
Yeah, well, I think that's required.
Cradle to pipe above ground.
Okay, any more questions? So just so everybody knows and not lost, it's a change in order in the amount of $11,400. I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to execute the change order number one. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, the change order's
Thank you.
approved. It was a lot of information that you've gotten, Richard. Sounds like these people that we're going to be voting on later tonight. Big help already.
Yes, we're working on it.
All right. Item 11 is a resolution. The Mayor, Karen Wilson, is hereby authorized to execute an agreement concerning a transportation planning process for the Eastern Shore urbanized area between the County of Baldwin and the municipalities of Daphne, Fairhope, Spanish Fort, Loxley, and the state of Alabama, acting by and through the Alabama Department of Transportation. Who placed this on the agenda? I asked Sherry Lee, and do you know, Clerk? It's the MPO. This is just their standard agreement we have to have every
Yes.
year, right?
Well,
Okay.
I don't know if it's every year, but it has been done.
Okay. This is just basically saying that because we are the MPO to keep that in order, that we have to just agree to this transportation planning process? Okay. I was just making certain. I think that Sherry Lee and I ran into each other in the hallway prior to the meeting, and she thought I put it on there, and I thought she put it on there. Shame on you, Sherry Lee. Okay. I did scan it, and it is related to the MPO, and it is necessary red tape. So I'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, item number 12 is a resolution authorizing filing of applications with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commissions by the Alabama Municipal Electric Authority on behalf of the city of Fairhope, a member city of AMEA, for waivers under the Public Utility Regulatory Policies Act of 1978 from purchase requirements for qualifying facilities and adopting rules for compliance with FERC's PURPA regulations. So if you can get the FERCs separated from the PURPAs, this is more red tape that's required by AMEA to allow us to make these purchases. So I'll entertain a motion
So moved.
to authorize the filing of this application.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any final discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, resolution passes. Thank you, council. Item 13 is a resolution. The Mayor, Karen Wilson, is hereby authorized to execute a contract with Goodwin Mills K-Wood to perform professional architectural or engineering services to replace the HVAC unit on the roof of the Civic Center with a not-to-exceed amount of $12,960. Who can speak to this? Lance, would you come up, please? I guess, since this is just the architectural and engineering services, are they designing some kind of truss system for the roof, or are they designing the
Well,
system
no, sir.
itself? What's going on for $12,000 we're not getting the air conditioner?
Richard has stepped out. He's been negotiating, but anytime we spend over $20,000, we got to have an engineer of record. So we're going to put three RTUs possibly on top of the Civic Center, which could be, I can't speak for, I did it last time, so I really don't know what it will be this time. It'll probably be a whole different ballgame. So you're definitely going to spend over $20,000, and you'll need, Goodwin Mills did it last time. They're very familiar with the building. They're very familiar with the structure, and so they engineered where we put the RTUs last time, and so I suggested that we use them, and I think they'd be good.
When did we replace that RTU last time?
Oh, we've been 2 years ago, we replaced HVAC 1. And we put three 10-ton RTUs on the roof and took the old 30-ton out of the mezzanine up here. We've got HVAC number 2. It's a 1969 model. You should hear it cut on and off every now and then back here. But hopefully, we'll get to do the same thing pending the engineering. It may not work out exactly like the first one because of space and the way the building's laid out and what we get into on the backside of this building.
So it'll be not just mounted, it might be how they have to route, lines
Absolutely.
on
Yes,
there.
sir.
So you talk about another 30-ton unit maybe? or-
Well, I want to put 3 RTUs on the roof and replace that 130-ton HVAC or air handling unit. So if we have redundancy, instead of 1 unit going down, if I got 3 10-ton units, I've got 2 that I can make run, one's down, we can have 2 more running. It's just, that's the way I like to be, is have redundancy to keep me out of a bind.
Questions for Lance, council?
I guess I've got one question, just, Richard and Richard, we've got both of y'all as engineers. How do we decide which projects y'all sign off on as engineer of record, and which ones we need to get somebody outside to jump on? Is there any method to the madness, or do we just
I can't
pick
speak
one?
for them. I mean, Richard's
Yes, sir.
brand new.
That's the one downside is I'm a civil engineer. So
Okay.
this means
Mechanical.
This is mechanical.
Mechanical,
we're gonna have a
gotcha.
mechanical engineer,
Right.
assistant engineer design.
Well,
Gotcha.
mechanical and structural, because the structure of the building's going to be involved.
Fair enough.
Any other questions, council? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to pass this resolution and authorize the mayor to execute this contract.
So moved.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, resolution passes. Item 14 is a resolution the City of Fairhope vote to purchase the Corona's timekeeping system maintenance annual renewal for December 2017 to December 2018 for the IT department. This type of maintenance renewal needed is on the Alabama State Department of Purchasing bid list, therefore it does not have to be let out for bid. The cost will be $18,369.71. Entertain a motion to purchase this maintenance annual renewal.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, annual renewal is approved. Item 15 is a resolution that the City of Fairhope vote to purchase the annual maintenance contract for the trunking infrastructure service for the police department and the volunteer fire department for Motorola Solutions as a sole source distributor, and authorizes a procurement based on the option allowed by the Code of Alabama, contractual services and purchases of commodities for which there's only one vendor or supplier, and contractual services and purchases of personal property which by their very nature are impossible to award by competitive bidding. I think that would be the sole source. The cost will be $23,257. Is Jeff, are you back there, Jeff? Oh, I see you. You might as well stay up here since the next one's for you as well.
Sound like a baby monitor.
This is support for the RS site at, behind the public utility building.
The antenna site?
And our antenna site. This should be the only year we have to pay it. Next year, the county is going to be covering it, but we had to cover this past year.
Okay.
It's just for the RF site, the antenna portion.
Any questions for Mr. Montgomery, council? That's why it didn't show up. Have they been paying for this, or have we been paying for this?
And, no, the warranty ran out, so this is the first year we've had
Oh,
a,
first.
yeah, right.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion to purchase this annual maintenance contract.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Is that budgeted for 17, 18?
Yes, Chris Ellis put it in his budget.
Or is it in our budget for 17, 18?
Yeah, it's in the city's budget.
I mean, next year's or the current year?
This coming up budget.
The coming up year?
Right.
Okay. The one that hadn't been approved, it's in that one?
Exactly.
Okay. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Item 16 is a resolution, the City of Fairhope vote to procure the annual VMware technical support for primary and backup data centers for the ID department in the amount of $10,420. The type of software is available through direct procurement through the National Joint Powers Alliance Buying Group contract, therefore does not have to be let out for bid. What is this?
This yearly maintenance contract for our hypervisor software, it's the software that basically runs our IT systems, that runs on top of the hardware, enables us to virtualize servers. Just a
This
year-
is not new software?
No, we've been running this for probably 5 years now.
Okay. Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Tough question. Do we have any tracking software installed on employees' computers at this time that you know of?
Tracking software, no, sir.
No key logging software?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm a little touchy when it comes to this software right now. All right, council, I'll entertain a motion to procure this VM technical support.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to procure the annual VM technical support. Any final discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, resolution passes. Thank you, Jeff. Item 17 is a resolution that Mayor Karen Wilson is hereby authorized to execute the second and final extension of the contract with BWI Companies for potting soil for the Public Works Department for an additional year as per the terms and conditions of the original contract. The price will be $9,729 per truckload, with an estimated annual cost for 5 truckloads of $48,645. Anyone here from Public Works? Richard, are you all up to speed on our soil? Sound good to you?
Yes, sir, it does.
It is the third year of an extension, so. Council, I'll entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any more questions for Richard? Or anyone else? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. Okay, resolution passes. Thank you. Item 18 is a resolution the City of Fairhope elects to come under the provision of Section 2 of Act 367 of the regular session of the 2017 Alabama Legislature. The City of Fairhope agrees to provide all funds necessary to the employees' retirement system to cover the cost of the one-time lump sum payment as provided for by said act for those eligible employees, retired, and beneficiaries of deceased retirees of the City of Fairhope, with the aforementioned increase being paid in October 2017. I'll take a stab at this. I think you may all be aware of it by now, but the state of Alabama, the state legislature has authorized municipalities to make a one-time lump sum payment to retirees, which would be $2 for each month of service credited to the retiree's account, or $300, whichever is greater. I've heard that this has been done every time it's come before the council, but I was also told that this was not done once. I've also been told that approximately, a little over 50% of the municipalities in the state have elected, that are eligible, have elected to provide this payment, and a little under 50% have elected not to provide that. So I might expect some debate on that, council. So the total cost to the City of Fairhope is $50,612, and I'll open up the floor for discussion. Anyone like to discuss this?
Sure, I would like to. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think one of the things that has always made Fairhope the special place that it is the city employees that we've had working for us. And so, to me, this is an opportunity to show them some support, for the employees that help make the city what it is. $50,000, if that's the ultimate number that it is no small number. But I do think it's a good sign of support to those employees.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'm going to, as y'all say, reiterate what Jay said, and the fact that I think these employees have done a fantastic, fabulous job throughout the years. And anytime we're able to support them, I'm going to be in favor of it almost every time. If it's the city can do it, I believe we need to do it, and I think we can do it.
I'll be the devil's advocate in the group, I guess, and I appreciate all of our employees, and I appreciate all of our past employees. I guess I just feel like if I was going to spend any money on this, and it's not to say that I'm not appreciative of their service to the city, I'd rather spend it on current employees or current issues, and I think that when you've retired, you've received, you know when you're stepping into retirement what you're getting, and I realize that this is not a large amount of money we're talking about, but $50,000 would be at least another employee somewhere that would cover somebody's salary in some department. So not to say that I don't appreciate everyone, and I really do. I just feel like I'd rather spend money on existing employees or some other issue.
I agree with Jimmy. You know, different times, different thoughts, but given where we are with everything we're having to study and infrastructure needs, appreciate the employees, but, you know, a lot of money is going to be needed here in the near future.
I guess, so I'm not left out, I'll chime in and think that it is, you know, as the city of Fairhope is thought throughout the state to be a leader, also thought to be a state that looks after their employees, always has, and also that would include in retirement. And I really do struggle with this because we do have a lot of needs, but, you know, we just approved almost the same amount for potting soil. And I think that, and which is necessary, and I totally agree that we need that, and that helps beautify our city. But I would hate to look some of these people that spent 30 years with the city and tell them that I couldn't find the money for that. And I guess it kind of comes back to that. It's also an incentive to hire employees. When we have a lot of open positions, I look at it as a way to attract employees to the city. And if they do come to work for the city and spend, you know, all of their years and they're able to retire, I look at it as a recruiting tool. So for that, I would support this. But be that it is, I will entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay.
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 I believe the ayes have it. Thank you, council. Item number 19 is a resolution. The city council approves the additional $1,000. This is increasing the funds up to $4,500 for the operations director, Richard Peterson, as engineer of record for the marine repairs. Actually, this should be to secure technical data regarding capacity and conditions of the travel lift facility and potential forklift. So what this is this for Mr. Richard Peterson to obtain further information so that he can engineer the repairs that are needed in that vicinity of the travel lift at the marina. Did I get that right, Mr. Peterson? Okay, so I believe that he has someone that's consulting with him, and that's the cost for him. But in the long run, because he will be engineer of record, it should save the city quite a bit of money. So any questions for me, Ms. Mazer, or maybe Mr. Peterson in that regard? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the additional $1,000, which would increase it for up to $4,500. Keep in mind, it may be less than that. Any final discussion?
Yeah, Jack, I have something. You know, I've heard it several times, and somebody said it again tonight, talking about dry storage at the marina. I don't know if that's the thought process of where the city might head down there if the boatyard is not released. But that concerns me a little bit. You know, the city taking over the marina is, you know, in my opinion, is questionable. That's going into competing business with surrounding landowners. It could be a little bit more natural fit taking over the marina. I can go along with that. But to put up a building and go into the dry storage business really concerns me, seeing how the city hadn't been the best stewards of their existing buildings. So we're going to build another one down in a hurricane-prone area. Just sounds like a horrible idea, you know, before we go too far with what the thoughts are to land down there. It's just my thoughts.
But you're not confusing that with this resolution,
No,
right?
no. Well, I hear travel lifts, and I think
Well, a travel lift, you know, a travel lift, you don't see many travel lifts. They're used for sailboats so that they can get the ballast up out of the water. but it's not a stretch to think that you might need the typical forklift down there to lift if you have a pleasure boat.
Right.
The travel lift, it moves very slow, and so I think that while they're engineering it, what you're trying to do is, I think you're going to engineer it to be used for the travel lift type that's down there with the belts, or a forklift type.
Well, I think there are
lift.
two different things. I think the
Right.
travel lift is mostly for the boatyard and for the bigger boats. Anything we do with a forklift would be for the dry storage, and that came up because there's a waiting list at every dry storage facility on this side of Mobile Bay. And so, and everybody that has them now is at capacity with what they have. So we just thought it was almost a instant, business opportunity to fill a need that's documented with the other dry boat storage. That's where that came from. Now, whether we do a building that's got 50 or 100, I can't tell you that, but, and that's where.
There's a need for hurricane cleanup down on Highway 1 too, but we gonna get into that?
I'm sorry?
I said, there's a need for hurricane cleanup down on Highway 1. Are we gonna get into that too?
Well, we were getting into the
How much we
dredging
gonna-
business the other week, I think.
Where are we at? Do we have a motion in a second?
Yes, you do.
All right. We have a motion and a second to approve the additional $1,000. Any final discussion? Okay, hearing none, all is in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, item 20 is appointments and reappointments to the Harbor Board. The new appointment would be Robert or Bob Watts. That is to replace one of the Harbor Board members that resigned. And the reappointments would be Tony Shavers, Scott Douglas, John Henry Jr., Skip Jones, Bob Riggs, and Tom Yeager for terms that shall end October 2021. I think everybody's familiar with the reappointments. On the new appointment, I want to make a comment that Mr. Watts has been here. He's been vocal. He's been down to meetings down there, and he's been vocal. But one of the things is he is a boat owner. He spends a lot of time at marinas, and especially at our marina, or what will be our marina in 4 or 5 days. He also is a resident of Seacliff Drive, and I think that they need some representation on the board, and I think that they'll feel more comfortable with what goes on down there if they maybe feel like they have some representation on the Harbor Board as well. I've also heard it mentioned that of some of these reappointments, should they be replaced, and I think that we have a really good, diverse group of people there, people that have been in the boating business, been around marinas. Some of them have differences of opinion with even the city council. They were not in favor of the city taking that back over. But rather than cast them to the side, I think it's healthy to have a difference of opinion from time to time, and I think we respect that, but we still would endorse them as Harbor Board members.
Absolutely.
So I will entertain a motion for the appointments and reappointments to the Harbor
So
Board.
moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the appointments and reappointments. Any further discussion?
I think I brought this up once before on another committee, but is there any kind of consideration to staggering some of the appointments so that we don't just have everybody? I mean, this is the entire Harbor Board, right?
It is, and we could
Come
have
up at
made, I
once.
guess we could have, but they were all expired.
Right,
And
so,
and they should have been maybe appointed, and, could we stagger some of these or 2-year terms maybe, and then some 4-year terms, maybe?
I just wonder if that would be helpful moving forward, but, I mean, I think they're all doing a good job, so. I don't know how they decide who gets to be a 2-year or a 4-year.
Who gets the pleasure of only serving 2 years, or who gets to stay 4, or vice versa, huh?
Just something to think about.
Okay. I have a motion and a second for the appointments and reappointments to the Harbor Board. Any final comments? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, appointments and reappointments are made. Thank you, council. Item 21 is an application for a nonprofit tax-exempt license by Baldwin County Humane Society for the Black Cat Ball located at 401 Oak Street. The lawn in front of the building This would be on October the 26th, 2013. Chief Pettis, do you see any reason to not approve this application?
No, everything was in order.
Okay. Council, I'll entertain a motion to approve this application.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the application. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, application is approved. Item 22 is an application for a restaurant liquor license by Douglas Lambert for a Dumbwaiter Restaurant LLC doing business as the Dumbwaiter Restaurant located at 58 North Section Street, Fairhope, Alabama. Chief, same question?
Yes, sir. Everything was in order on this one also.
Okay. This is, where is this location? Is this at the Colony? I mean, the...
This is where Bucks is.
Oh, this is where Bucks is, okay.
Yeah.
Any questions for the chief? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the application.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve this application. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the application being approved, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, the application is approved. Item 23 was the item on the agenda approved at the beginning of the meeting. I'll read this resolution. This is, be it resolved by the governing body of the City of Fairhope, Alabama, that the City Council approves the selection of PPM Consulting Incorporated for RFQ number PS 002-18, professional engineering consulting services related to the installation of fuel tanks and the preparation of the spill containment plan at Fairhope Docks. This hereby authorizes Mayor Karen Wilson to establish a fee schedule, establish a not-to-exceed limit of $3,700, and execute the associated project. A contract, I'm sorry. I'll entertain a motion to pass this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, resolution passes. Item 24, also added at the beginning, is a resolution that would approve the use of the city street sweeper to sweep the main road through the Grand Hotel property. Mr. Johnson, would you please, explain to the council in your words how that works, that it serves a public purpose? I'd be remiss if I didn't say that our city attorney did have a question of whether or not we can use that on private property. And I also point out that that is, I think that's owned by the retirement system of Alabama. It's a government entity. I don't know if that plays into it or not, but.
Well, and my familiarity is there are times when cities determine there's a public good that does cross that line between public and private. And as I understand it, as long as the city council, the governing body, passes in this case, a resolution stating that they recognize that public good, then those expenditure of public resources can be used in that way. Now, this wouldn't be qualified for any kind of FEMA reimbursement. This is just something as a good neighbor to the Grand Hotel, recognizing that they're a large contributor to the success of the city of Fairhope.
I think that there is a direct benefit to the city that the quicker that they can open, the quicker that they can have guests, which will fill our shops and restaurants and pay lodging tax and sales tax and whatnot.
Yes, sir. And, and understand that every employee of yours here in the city of Daphne is a member of the RSA.
City of Daphne, where you at?
Excuse me, Fairhope. I'm going to have to watch that. It's first week.
It's okay.
I won't make that mistake again. Thank you.
You get two.
Just picking on you, Richard. That's understandable.
Now, the wording of the resolution, does it state that what the public purpose is and that it is for a public purpose? I don't have a copy of that.
Well, you didn't write it?
No, I didn't write anything.
All right.
But we need to have a resolution that will say that it is, that the council determines that a public purpose exists, and I think that the specific public purpose has to be set out as to what it is to do this. They say that usually the courts will defer to the legislative body's determination about a public purpose. However, courts will overturn this decision if the court feels that the stated public purpose is improper or insufficient. And there's case law in which council's stated public purposes have been
overturned by the courts as being insufficient and improper. Now, I've been working on this ever since we talked about it. I've been concentrating on this all night, and I still don't have a specific answer to that question. But I think Richard is right that if a public purpose does exist, that we can do this.
Do you want to add that we've done this in the past? Or do you remember if author said that?
There is some indication that precedent has been set. We're just trying to make sure that the legislative body identifies and agrees, concurs, that a public purpose is served here.
We've done this after other hurricanes.
Mr. Robinson, have you got that defined?
Yes. No.
He's ready to go eat birthday.
Do I have what defined?
The public purpose?
I do not. Was that something I was assigned to do?
I'm just thinking that, with your mind, 20, 30 seconds, you should be able to come up with something.
Thank you for not putting me on the spot, no.
Some of the guidance on that, I'd just like to read some of this. A public purpose is defined as a governmental purpose. It has for its objective the promotion of the public health, safety, morals, general welfare, security, prosperity, and contentment of all the inhabitants or residents within a given political subdivision. The paramount test should be whether the expenditure, and this would be, in this case, the use of equipment, the municipal equipment, confers a direct public benefit of a reasonably general character that to a significant part of the public, as distinguished from a remote and theoretical benefit.
Can we not say that this would accelerate the opening of an institution that contributes greatly to the
I heard prosperity.
prosperity of the city?
One other thing I'd just like to mention, it does say the trend of the cases in modern courts is to give the term public purpose a broad and expansive definition.
Prosperity is a broad
And
definition.
I think that that's the trend we can go with. I think what Council President just said as a specific public purpose would.
It definitely adds to the prosperity of our city.
I think that would.
I don't think there's any argument in that. Yes, sir. Could you come up here? I'm sorry. I know you're camera shy, but you can come up here.
If it makes any difference, I will let you know the Grand Hotel and their contractor wrote $103,000 in building permits in the month of October and are probably going to pay that amount or more again before the end of 2017. They've got more projects coming.
Prosperity.
Just so you know.
Vast prosperity. We got that, clerk? Okay, so the stated public purpose is accelerates this is a resolution to authorize the city to sweep the Grand Hotel's main roadway through there, which will accelerate the entity's ability to open to help the city's prosperity. Do I have a
So moved.
Second.
have a motion and a second? Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, that's approved. All right. Last item is public participation. If you have anything else to bring forth before the council, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
The last time you're going to see me tonight, I promise.
Ridiculous.
Putting on my Booster Club hat, let you know, normally we do a pancake breakfast spring and fall. Our winter sports have always been disappointed because by the time we get around to them in January, their season's done. So October 21st, Saturday, at Fairhope High School, 8 o'clock in the morning. We're doing it at the high school. It is going to be the men's and women's basketball teams, varsity JV for both the middle school and the high school. The bowling team will be there, which if you didn't realize, Fairhope has a bowling team, and we have paid a whole lot of money for them to go to state because they're actually very good. And the wrestling team, which they started last year with 20 wrestlers, they have over 50 kids signed up this year. and that program has taken off. We're going to have about 160 athletes plus their families. We are not doing pancakes. We're doing sausage and biscuits and gravy and eggs. So, and actually, the basketball team is going to have a little short workout where you can go watch them after they're done. So we would like to invite everybody that Saturday morning, the 21st, at Fairhope High School, not the middle school, at 8 a.m.
You want to tell everybody about the 500th win by football team?
Absolutely.
Friday night?
If anybody wasn't able to make it or didn't watch it on Pirate Nation Live, Fairhope High School won their 500th career game. In the game Friday night, they played extremely well. That team is looking really good this year. They are coming back home. They have been on the road for 4 weeks, or either on the road or had an off game for 4 weeks. So this coming Friday night's their first game at home in a month. It is also the Hall of Fame night, and I believe there were 7 or 8 inductees that are going to be put in the Fairhope Hall of Fame. So please come out. We're going to have several in a row. And I emailed Desmond Joyner today, but I got a phone call this afternoon from Lee Shervanian from WNSP. The week of the McGill game, they want to come in that Friday morning, and they want to do their live morning show from somewhere in Fairhope. They want to broadcast that game. They've got they're offering a sponsorship package where it's 20-something advertisements over the course of the week. So WNSP is going to be in town. They're going to make that McGill-Fairhope game a big deal. And if things keep going the way they're going, it's going to be a big game anyway, but it probably have some playoff consequences at that time. So it's good.
Thank you, Eric. Floor is still open to public participation.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Doug Jones, 27548 Tecumseh Court. I'm not the Doug Jones that's running for U.S. Senate, just in case you were wondering. I'm here today to talk about Quail Creek and the municipal golf course. I've been a member there for going on 18 years now. And I don't know if any of you have stepped out there lately or in the last, say, 6 months, 9 months to a year and either played golf or just even seen the golf course. But I know in the last 18 years that I've been there, the course has gone through a lot of dramatic changes. 5 years ago, the council, I guess, voted and the city put in all new greens. There was reconciliation fees and we moved elsewhere, took our business elsewhere for the 9 months or whatever it was that they put new greens in. That was supposed to solve the whole entire problem with the golf course because the greens at that point were awful. Once they were established, it was much better. Then 2 years after that, which go back about 2 years ago, put in a whole new irrigation system and spent a lot of money doing that. And that was supposed to solve everything. It was supposed to be, we're going to now get grass to grow in all the places that we couldn't get grass to grow, make this golf course look good, get more tournaments in, get more business in, so on and so forth. I don't know if you've been out there, but that has definitely not happened. Part of one of the biggest reasons is when we had that big, massive rainstorm, I think it was a year and a half ago. It's about a year and a half ago, the once-in-a-lifetime storm. That just totally washed away a lot of the golf course. The cart paths, if you go down 3 or 4 of those holes, there are no cart paths. There's irrigation pipe that is visible down 13. And I'll tell you a quick story. I was actually there. I was getting ready to play. I was inside getting ready to pay, and a gentleman came back in and demanded his money back. And I was just sitting back listening to it. He was from Louisiana, came down here, he was on vacation. He was playing, he said, I just played 3 holes, I want my money back. He goes, this is the worst golf course I've ever seen. And I was just like, I started thinking about the 3 holes he played, and I hate to say it, he's right. 1 and 3 is atrocious. You can break wrists, there's roots, but I can go on and on. I guess my point really is anything really being done besides just, I go out there to play golf, I try to bring customers of mine out there to spend money, but I hate to say it, most of the time I take them to Timber Creek, I take them to Rock Creek, I take them elsewhere. And I'm a member. I spend $5,000 to $7,000 to $8,000 a year, and I'm one of 100, 150 that are annual members that spend that kind of money out there, food, beverage, pro shop, hold on, one more second. The pro shop, I know, if you've been out there, had a bunch of termite damage and everything else. And I guess, everything was being presented to either tear it down or rebuild it. Nothing has been touched to that pro shop in I don't know how many months. I guess it's been 6, 9 months, something like that. Nothing has been done. So you've got a porta potty basically sitting off to the side, and then you've got the pro shop running out of the restaurant or the grill that's in there as well. And we've got 20 to 40 members right now who are seriously looking at leaving and going to Timber Creek or Rock Creek or, we understand it's a municipal golf course. It's never going to be a Steelwood. It's not going to be a Lakewood. That's two totally different things. But a golf course should still be playable in the aspect of cart paths. You should be able to stand on a tee and define and see what a fairway looks like. You can't do that. You look out there and the rough looks like the fairway. There's no definition. A bunker's not even outlined completely. I played with the pro a couple weeks ago, and I said, pro. I said, am I in the
We're going to
bunker?
have to wrap it up soon, Mr. Jones.
That's it. So, I mean, I'm just trying to find out what is going on with Quail Creek Golf Course and where are we going to get it back to where the way it's supposed to be even with the irrigation that we have, the new greens, and the way the course looks right now.
Well, I'm going to offer up some advice since we're council members and we're supposed to give counsel, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but I think that Bobby Hall should be given control of that golf course and run that golf course, and he's here, and I didn't know you were going to be here tonight, I'm sorry, but I think you should be given the control to run that thing the way you want to run it. I hear from Mr. Jones, I do play golf out there.
Yeah.
From time to time. I don't play as much as I'd like to, but I've been getting beat up pretty bad by a lot of the people that you say are going to leave. We get a lot of complaints, everything from one of the course maintenance workers literally drove across the green and ran over a flag that was still in the cup twice.
Mm-hmm.
And when it was pointed out to the course superintendent, I was told, this is allegedly, I wasn't there, was indifferent to that. And that culture has to change. And Mayor, as a counselor, I would say give Mr. Hall.
We've been working on this a great deal with Lynn's help. We are, Tom Cool, because he has a very experienced staff when it comes to the different greens and equipment. I mean, it's a long story. I don't want to get into all of the details, but I know Lynn met with a group down at Quail Creek because I had a meeting with the Restore Act group the exact same time that it was set up and went over a lot of these details, but we are well on our way to having some great resolutions to this, and Lynn can speak if you want. I mean, to give a recap of that meeting, but as far as the clubhouse, you weren't here for the work session, but that's really one of our very slow inefficiencies in the city that I hope to get rectified very soon. And
well, I think it's a great suggestion that Bobby Hall, most courses, the head pro is in charge, the head pro is in charge of the
head pro is going to
golf
be in charge of everything a head pro would be. This is,
If
the
he's going to take
greens.
the grunt from everybody, he should also be able to delegate and be able to say, do this, cut this green, roll it, verticut it, do this, do that, to get it the way it should be.
Our Parks and Recreation person is also a great person with this, and he already has the staff to do it, and he can manage that. This is greens. It's a different,
It's not just
Bobby's
cutting
going to
grass.
completely, what?
I said, it's not just cutting grass, it's greens. You spent $28,000
No,
years ago.
that's
to-
what I'm talking
to take
about is
care of
the greens.
Right.
Right.
And I know you spent $28,000 years ago to bring in an outside source to take care of the weed problem and everything else. And if you've been out there, you would notice that was, I hate
I've
to say,
been out
that
there.
was wasted money.
And
You know.
we've spent a great deal of time. Lynn, do you want to, it's definitely being talked about, and we've talked to a lot of people at Quail Creek.
As council knows, let's start with the building. I contacted Lawrence Wilson last week, and he has, he's done everything he needs to do here. He's gone out for bids. He expects to start on the building within the next 6 to 8 weeks, pending council approval of the bids that come back in. So that's where we start with the building.
Yeah, and let me stop you right there and say, we've done every action that we can do over the last, we haven't heard anything in, a month or so? Well, the last action we took was a month or so, and if they're not getting back with bids, I don't know how that's.
I don't know why it took
how
so
it counts
long.
as a roadblock.
Yeah, I don't understand that either, and that's why I contacted him and said, where are we? What's your deadline on the bids? And the response was, we should be, with council approval, once the bids come in, we should be able to start 6 to 8 weeks on the building. For me, that's too long.
Jack, yeah,
When we've
and
been,
I'd also like to comment, being in the construction industry, people expect stuff to happen overnight, and then you throw in government, and it just slows it down even more. I mean, if you go to an architect and try to get plans for residential renovation, depending on who it's going to be, it's going to be 3 to 6 months to get plans. So, I mean, it's just part of the process to get from where you are to where you want to be, and then you throw in, trying to cut back on the scope of work to get it into the budget, and it's no different than the other renovation project. So it's, time-wise, I don't think it's taking any longer than it should have. I understand it seems like a long time, and it is, but it's just part of the construction process.
And you're the guy who would know. Let's talk about the course. The course itself. We know what we've had is the same thing being done over and over and over again, and the old adage is, if you keep doing the same thing and get the same results, you're stuck with the same results. We recently went to Tom Cole because we're bringing, really officially, we're bringing the golf course in under Parks and Rec. Tom has an agronomy background, and he has 2 agronomists on his staff. All 3 of them went out and they reviewed the course, and Tom is now working with Jeff and revamping the maintenance on the course, what to do, the techniques, and whatever else. There is a program out there that we're just starting to talk about where we can actually map the course, because as you know, it's not like the soccer field, it's not all the same grass, the same level. One green from one half to the other side can be different. And we're going to be looking at a program that will go through that course and will read everything, the fairways, the greens, whatever, and tell us where the issues are and what they are with water, goosegrass, everything that we're dealing with out there. It's tough. It's not an easy course. In order to take trees down, we have to go to Paul Merchant and get permission there. Not everybody understands what a tree does to a course and where it's located and why, and it's not just the roots, it's the shade, it's drying out, it's everything else. A course is not easy to maintain, and that is not an excuse. But we are virtually starting over again in the maintenance techniques. I did ride around the course last week with Lance. We looked at the golf carts, the paths. There's no 2 ways about it. We've got potholes. The cart paths are in terrible condition, but money has never been spent on this course, and you can't have a golf course with no money spent on it. And I'm sorry, gentlemen, but this is the can that has hit the wall. And it's not just the building, it is the course, in order to keep it playable. And we are starting in-house with expertise to start working on that course itself.
Well, I would argue that it's gone, it's slid.
It has
They're saying
slid.
that you can't, you have to spend money, and I don't disagree with that, we all know that. But if we had maintained a certain level at that course over time, and then you would have to say you would have to spend more money to go to the next level. The course conditions have declined. We have invested a lot of money in, as Mr. Jones said, in the greens, and I think that was even 5 or 6 years ago, prior to my previous term on the council. The irrigation system was billed as going to improve it, so I would think that the conditions would improve and not decline, and I think that the issue is more systemic than that, and being in here, I'm not going to point fingers, but there are a lot of golfers in there that have a lot different theory than some of what you're saying right now, and that's what this gentleman's trying to say.
Yeah. When it comes to, and to address Mr. Jones' concern about when you're looking at a fairway and you're looking at a rough, there is supposed to be a difference. There are golfers out there who complain that they lose their ball in the rough, therefore cut the rough, I can't find my ball. You try to appease them, you lose your rough. There is a reason why there's a rough on a fairway. And us golfers understand what it is, and it's supposed to keep us down the narrow, straight and narrow. So there's different attitudes on how to maintain a fairway. And that's something that needs to be brought to center. There has to be an agreement on how that course is laid out from fairway point
And
of
an
view.
agreed upon plan for the greens, which has not been in place. And
No.
that's what we're putting together too, with
It's-
the people who are the most experienced that we have on staff to do so.
No, it's our next big project. There's no 2 ways about it. You're going to start hearing a whole lot more about the golf course and what we need to do with it, and recommendations to do it, because it can be our next gem. And it should be.
It's definitely a priority. I've talked to Bobby. Bobby knows that. I'm the one that does want to spend money out there, but we are working with what we have. But we're also looking at all the employees that we already have on staff, and we're bringing the most experienced people to the table to fix the problems.
Of what we have available to us in an attempt to make a movement forward without spending additional funds. We know where we're spending money in this city, and the golf course is coming up next. Sorry, guys, but it's coming.
Thank you. Public participation is still open.
Wendy Solomon, 123 Sandy Ford Road. Regarding the street sweeper, thank you so much. The last time I was up here, that street sweeper was in my neighborhood the next day, so I appreciate Lisa and Lynn taking care of that. I know we're all concerned about Fly Creek and where some of the problems are coming from. I have pictures that I took in 2016 in the wetlands behind my house. I'm not sure if that was ever taken care of. I did reach out to Lance LaFleur with the Alabama Department of Environment Management. I did not hear anything back from him. He directed that I contact Luther Strange at that time, but I did not. But anyhow, I wanted to show you some of the pictures. I didn't want to inundate you with multiple pictures and videos that I have, but I just wanted to give you each copy of these, and I'm not sure if it's been resolved or if somehow those wetlands, what was in the wetlands that I saw, because it smelled like gas, and it smelled like feces. And so anyhow, like I said, I'm not sure if that has gotten resolved. It took care of itself over a year, but I just thought that you all would all be interested in having these pictures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, floor is still open.
Rodney Kilgore, 10273 Solon Court. Thank you, by the way, I didn't come here for this, but thank you for approving our proposal for the SPCC plan at the marina. I live in River Mill subdivision, and I work in Spanish Fort and go up 181 every day to work. And the congestion at 104 and 181 has, on the north and south, has just become unbearable. Traffic can back up all the way to the Cordy Farms from 104, and I know this may not be y'all's jurisdiction, but could fall under Alabama DOT, but is there any way we could do some kind of a feasibility study to where maybe they could lengthen the length of the lights on the north and southbound lanes to maybe let some more traffic come through there and not back up so much?
I'm smiling because I had the unfortunate happenstance of coming through there at rush hour one day last week.
It's terrible.
And it was awful.
It's terrible.
I literally almost drove off into the peanut field and went around it to go right.
It's
I
terrible.
literally considered it.
So,
It's that
like I
bad.
say, is
But
there's,
I will tell you that I know it's a pretty high priority for the county to get that, in the state, to get that four lane.
Yes.
That's way up the priority list right now. I can't give you a time frame because, as you know, AlDOT.
yeah, I understand, and that's going to take a little while to get done anyway.
I think that, I sit on the MPO, and that is a concern that's continually brought up. And I would just urge you to talk to your state representatives and your county representatives as well, whether that be Joe Faust and Senator Pittman and Chris Elliott and Tucker Dorsey and all the county commissioners, and letting us know helps. When we go to MPO meeting, we can stress that. But that's not our jurisdiction.
I understand. I just thought maybe.
It is. And we can make that recommendation. I'm sure may say they have done a traffic study, but to lengthen that light, one thing that I noticed, just to be honest with you though, is I tell you all this, but I was just literally almost pushing that car in front of me to make sure that I made the light.
Yeah.
And when I made the right turn on 104 and looked back, there were 75 or 100 yards between some cars. Because you know why? Because they're sitting there texting.
Oh, that's
and they're
true,
sending
too.
emails at the stoplight, probably because they have enough time. But once it starts going, I even thought of a sign, to put out there, keep up with the car in front of you. Because 20 or 30 cars may have gone through there. But,
Sure.
I hear what you're saying about that. And, a lot of times, and I see it at some other intersections around town, the left turn lanes are not long enough. They're long enough to
That's true.
accommodate the 2 or 3 cars that turn.
Right.
But unfortunately, you can't get
You
to
can't
it
get to
because
it.
the traffic that's going
Yeah.
north or south backs up so far, you can never get to the turn lane.
Yeah, I've driven that road for, I guess, 11 years now, and it just seemed like the last year or so, it's just gotten unreal.
Yeah.
So-
Well, is there some construction going on somewhere that's pushing
No,
more
I
people
I
onto
think
that?
it's just the amount of traffic on 181 now.
Yeah. Just the amount of development out
Yeah,
there.
people are just trying, it's a 2-lane road, it narrows from 4-lane to 2-lane, just south of 64, and that bottlenecks everything, but that light it just seems like
Yeah.
it's not long enough to let enough cars come
It was
through.
last Thursday that I went through there,
Yeah.
and it was at 5 o'clock, and it
Yeah,
was bad.
it's bad, but that's what I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
That circle at 13 gets opened up again, maybe that'll help.
Maybe that, yeah.
Well, that's some of it.
That
See,
might be
13
too.
is closed
Yeah.
there. I knew there was something that's stopping some of that
So,
traffic.
maybe so. Hopefully.
Hopefully that'll help.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kilgore.
Now, the subject of traffic lights have come up. I didn't even think about it, but I've got a
Uh-oh.
pet peeve. And I come down Section Street rather late in the evening quite often, and the traffic light there at Section and Volanta and Gaper, I guess it's on red so long and there's green so long, and you're coming along at 10:30, and all of a sudden, the light turns red on Section, and you sit there. There's no cars on Volanta, there's no car, yet you sit there at night and you're burning gasoline and time is going by. Nothing comes by. So then you get from Volanta down to Gaper, same thing. About the time you get there, it turns red. You look, is there any cars? Not that way, not that way. What the hell am I sitting here for? Oh, 'cause the light is red. And so you sit, what is the deal? Can't they put on some kind of sensor or something? And I never really thought about it, and I don't worry about my safety. I guess we should. But I recall some time ago over in Mobile, that's another story, but this lady stopped for a red light. It was dark, and she was robbed, abducted, so forth, and said there was no other cars coming, it was just in case the light turned red on a timer or whatever it is. So I can appeal to you. And is that a county road, a city road, a state road? Who controls the traffic light?
Can we get your name and address for the record too, sir?
Yeah, my name is Ray Hartwell, and I live at 57 Morphy Avenue.
Mr. Hartwell, thus our jurisdiction, and I can tell you that we sat in this room. Jimmy Cluster was our electric superintendent, and I asked him that question. I have brought this up probably 2 or 3 times about those exact same 2 lights. They are not on sensors, they are on timers, and I even asked Mr. Cluster, I said, can you please, just for starters, just reduce the side streets by 10 seconds and add 10 seconds to the section, or 15 seconds, just something, because I burn that road up 10, 12 times a day, and it is frustrating to sit at those lights for a long time, and there's nobody on those crossing streets.
And I have to look and see if, oh God, the police are still
No,
there.
don't say it in front of me.
Honestly, there are sometimes you are tempted
I know it's
to
tempting.
run the red light. Okay, thanks for listening to me.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? I think everybody in the audience pretty much has spoken pretty much. All right, seeing no one else, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, council. Thank you, Mayor.